Welcome, it's Facts You Don't Know. If it's your first time here and you want to find out new facts that will definitely make you smarter and more, well, and first make sure to subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss anything.
Her skin had withered, not only from the passing of the years, but also from the burden of grief that waited for a miracle every day produced. For 30 years now, when he saw his son leave and never heard from him again. The entire town thought that he'd lost his mind because the son had gone to a place where there was an epidemic and everyone said that he died of it. But the humble Edelmira always took between his hands and the photo of his son, looked at the sky and said, "The Lord will give it back to me." Edelmira was a simple woman. She fell in love with an evil man who deluded her. But when she found out she was pregnant, she disappeared forever. The poor woman cried the first days because she was alone in life, because her parents had died in a fire along with her two brothers. From that tragedy, she came out alive by a pure miracle, and from that moment on, she did not stop believing that no matter how difficult the circumstances of life, faith can always lead us to achieve the grace that's needed. I believe in miracles. On that day, in the middle of the flames, she didn't know how to get out. There was no place to escape from them. I don't know how I managed to stay alive. The only thing I remember is that I passed out, and after all, I saw blurry. I was in the courtyard of the house without knowing how. I wanted to go back to help my family, but I couldn't. Then the firefighters arrived, and I found out that I was alone in the world. This is how the poor woman related her tragedy. Since she was orphaned, she lived with a neighbor who had no children and decided to take care of her. The woman educated her, and when she felt ill, she admitted her to a boarding school for young ladies where she studied teaching. One day, after graduation, her protector died. The humble house of the woman became the property of Edelmira. Soon after, she found work in a school for nuns near the house, and thus, very young, began her career as an educator. The salary was not high, but it allowed her to have a fixed income for her expenses. In that school, she fell in love with a bad man who was the supervisor of the Ministry of Education and came to evaluate the staff. That love was like at first sight. The man was very attentive and gentlemanly, which dazzled the inexperienced girls. He constantly visited her at home and managed to seduce her to the point of giving himself completely. When the man left her, she was not afraid because she had a job. However, when the nuns found out about her pregnancy, however married, they decided that she was not a good example for the girls, so they fired her. But due to her pregnant state, the dismissal was illegal and they had to reinstate her. Things were not easy, but with her work, she was able to buy everything she needed to welcome her son. Alone in the hospital, this is how she received her son Leopoldo, who represented the great illusion of her life and the engine to keep going. With the statutory maternity leave completed, the nuns waited only to fire her. However, when she begged them for mercy because she had no family other than her son, they decided to give her another chance and asked her to please be less naive of the subject of love. That word, in the sense of feelings towards a man, Edelmira had been removed from her dictionary. For she had sworn that she would give herself, body and soul, to her son and would not allow anyone to come between them. She started tutoring in the afternoon, which meant that the way she would improve her income. Leopoldo grew up and stood out in the private school that she paid him because he trusted that education was the only way to change the history of poverty that she'd lived. Leopoldo was always neat, clean, with shoes unlike most of the children in that place. The boy was very driven and wanted to study medicine, so his mother saved a lot to make that dream come true, because she knew he could achieve it with her support. The boy was growing very cultured and above all educated. He also worked running errands for his neighbors, and with that money he bought things that his mother couldn't give him. He even took her out to eat from time to time to have a good time together. Edelmira and Leopoldo's life was good. They had no luxuries or things like that, but in reality they were a team. The love of mother and son was undeniable, so there was a lot of harmony in their home. Leopoldo had a great talent for writing poetry, and at his young age he had several poems written. So he was encouraged to participate in a contest, which he won, and with the awards he was able to make some improvements in his humble home that his mother inherited from the woman who picked him up when she was orphaned. Finishing the improvements, a distant cousin of the woman who raised Edelmira arrived. It looked classy. She arrived in her own car and was lavish in luxury, both on clothes, shoes, and jewelry, just like her husband. Edelmira welcomed them with great pleasure and told them that her son was very intelligent and wanted to study medicine, to which the couple told them to count on them to support the boy. They told her that she could take them to the city so that he would have better life chances, which seemed like a very good idea to Edelmira, even though her heart was breaking in two. Leopoldo did not want to leave his mother, but they forced him to leave to follow his dreams. Bathed in tears, mother and son said goodbye without imagining that they were opening the door to the greatest misfortune in their lives. The boy was amazed seeing the landscape from one side to the other, since he had never left that place. When they arrived at the couple's house, all their illusions fell apart, since there were 6 children in the house who were practically in captivity, because they'd been tricked and only wanted to sell them to families that could not have children. Leopoldo was convinced that he could not escape from this place. The other children were afraid of him for that reason. They lived there in submission. Leopoldo was not willing to follow that fate, so he decided to pretend that he would obey while he planned what to do. But in those days, an epidemic fell in that city, and 2 of the recruited children died, and Leopoldo was afraid of going out to catch it. 3 months later, when the epidemic was under control, a foreign couple came to the house and bought Leopoldo. The boy told them that he was not an orphan, but the couple did not understand the reasons and took him out of the country with false documents. Meanwhile, at Edelmira's house, she cried because she didn't know anything about her son. Several months had passed, and these people did not respond to the call she made. Eaten away by grief, the woman took the only portrait of her son and left for the direction that the fatal couple had given them. Upon reaching the site, a tall blonde woman came out to greet her. Edelmira asked about the couple, and they indicated that they had left the house 2 weeks ago. Disconsolate, the woman had only go to the police authorities, who, far from understanding her case, began to recriminate her for having handed over her son as cousins at first. The years went by, and the humble teacher of the town continued teaching. In the afternoons, he always went to the park to see if someone would give him news of Leopoldo. The son had spoilt part of the portrait that she always carried in her hands and said, "In the name of God, someone give me a sign to find my son." He would go to neighboring towns and do the same. People were looking at her badly. Some thought she was crazy, because the old photo seemed taken from a lost corner. When the teacher was retired, she walked great distances in search of news of her son. Her neighbors were watching her and told her not to continue wasting her energies because surely her son had died in that epidemic. "I know that my son is alive, and that one day he will walk through the door to give me a big hug. I know that one day that miracle will happen," Edelmira said with tears in her eyes. The neighbors looked at her with great regret, as they were sure that if her son had been alive, he would have already looked at her. Edelmira grew old waiting for the return of her only son. Year after year, he bought her clothes that he said he was saving for his return. The flame of hope. Sometimes she spoke up weak and others as strong as in the beginning. The woman suddenly stopped eating. She didn't want to bathe and said that without her son it was not worth anything. One morning her door did not open. Her neighbors came to look for her, but she decided not to leave the room anymore. 3 days later, to everyone's surprise, she went out smiling to buy fresh bread and milk. He had the house and the table clean, prepared for 2 people because he had a dream in which a woman had assured him that her son would return. The daylight faded and the tables were mocked. The woman, bathed in tears, began to collect the silverware and plates, when suddenly she gave a cry. An unknown man was standing in the room. "May I give you a hug, Mom?" the stranger asked. Edelmira dropped the plates and ran to him. Leopoldo is Lucia as a wealthy man. Well, actually it was. His adoptive parents had changed his name and identity to get them out of the country. They kept it without any means of communication available. They trained him as the doctor he wanted to be, and once he had completed his surgery specialty, he sued them in court for keeping him almost in captivity. Leopoldo won the lawsuit, and the embassy of his country was in charge of looking for his mother so that they could be reunited. In medical hour, and he was grateful to his adoptive parents and did not allow them to go to jail. On the contrary, he asked them to accompany him to his mother. The couple was sorry and asked for his heartfelt forgiveness. The 3 traveled to the reunion. Edelmira knelt down and thanked God that this miracle had happened after 30 long years. The neighbors could not believe what they saw and asked how this was possible. And Edelmira replied that with faith, everything is achieved. Her son took her to live in a comfortable house. He fell in love with a neighbor's daughter and they married. Edelmira's heart finally found peace, and she was proud of the great doctor that her son was. Friends, now tell us, what did you think of this story? Leave your answer in the comment section so we can all read it. Thanks for watching. Please like and share the video in social networks. We'll be right back to you as fast as we can.